Let's begin our journey by thinking about names. Not just any names, but the names we give to places that tower above us. Places that have watched over communities for countless generations. Mount Everest, as many in the Western world know it, carries more than one name. And this matters. It matters deeply because a mountain this significant doesn't belong to just one story, one culture, one way of seeing the world. To the Nepali people, this giant is known as Sagarmatha. Take a moment with that word, Sagarmatha. It rolls off the tongue like a prayer, like something whispered in reverence. And its meaning is just as beautiful as its sound. Sagarmatha translates to forehead of the sky, or skyhead. Imagine that. A forehead touching the heavens, the highest point where Earth meets the infinite blue above. It's a name that captures not just the physical reality of the mountain's tremendous height, but something more poetic, more spiritual. The people who named it this way saw it as the meeting place between the earthly and the divine. On the Tibetan side, the mountain is called Chomolungma, which means Mother Goddess of the World. Another name, another perspective, another layer of meaning. These names aren't interchangeable labels. They're windows into how different cultures have related to this massive presence in their landscape for millennia. Long before anyone thought about climbing it, long before it became famous around the world, it was Sagarmatha. It was Chomolungma. It was sacred. The Western name Everest comes from Sir George Everest, a Welsh geographer and Surveyor General of India in the 19th century. He never actually saw the mountain himself. The naming happened in 1865, years after the peak was identified as the world's highest. Some argue it would have been more respectful to use one of the indigenous names, and that conversation continues today. But what's important for us as we settle into this story is understanding that this mountain carries the weight of many perspectives, many histories. Now, here's something that might surprise you as you drift toward sleep. This sacred giant, this meeting place of earth and sky, is officially protected. In 1976, the area surrounding Sagarmatha was designated as Sagarmatha National Park. Picture that moment, a recognition that this landscape needed safeguarding, that its unique ecosystems, its rare wildlife, its cultural significance required formal protection. Just 3 years later, in 1979, UNESCO stepped in and declared it a World Heritage Site. This wasn't just a local decision anymore. The world community looked at Sagarmatha and said, "This matters to all of us. This needs to be preserved not just for the people of Nepal, not just for adventurers and climbers, but for humanity, for the future, for the snow leopards and red pandas that call these slopes home, for the rhododendron forests that bloom in impossible places, for the Sherpa communities whose culture is woven into every valley and ridge." When you think about UNESCO recognition, you might think about ancient temples or historic cities. But here, it's the living landscape itself that earned protection. The interplay of nature and culture. The way human communities have lived in harmony with one of Earth's most extreme environments for generations. But Sagarmatha National Park doesn't exist in isolation. Let your mind zoom out now, like a camera pulling back to reveal a wider view. Sagarmatha is part of something even grander, a sacred Himalayan landscape, a vast conservation corridor that stretches across borders and peaks. This corridor spans from Kanchenjunga in the east to Langtang in the west, creating a protected pathway for wildlife, a preserved space for ecosystems that exist nowhere else on Earth. Imagine the scope of that. We're not talking about a single mountain, isolated and alone. We're talking about an interconnected web of protected areas where snow leopards can roam, where migratory birds can find refuge, where glacial rivers begin their long journey to the lowlands. This conservation corridor represents a collaborative effort between Nepal and neighboring countries to think beyond borders, to recognize that nature doesn't recognize the lines we draw on maps. The sacred Himalayan landscape is home to some of the world's most endangered species. It protects watersheds that provide water to millions of people downstream. It preserves traditional ways of life that have adapted to high-altitude existence over centuries. And at its heart, standing tallest of all, is Sagarmatha, the forehead of the sky, the mother goddess of the world, the mountain we also call Everest. As you let these ideas wash over you, consider how much intention has gone into protecting this place. How many people, across how many years, have worked to ensure that future generations will still be able to look up at Sagarmatha and feel what people have felt for thousands of years: awe, reverence, wonder. The mountain isn't just protected because it's tall. It's protected because it matters, because it's sacred, because it represents something essential about the natural world and our relationship to it. Let that thought settle as we prepare to move deeper into the story of how this giant came to be. Now that we understand what Sagarmatha means to those who live beneath it, let's travel back in time, way back, 50 to 60 million years back, to be precise. Close your eyes and imagine not a mountain, but an ocean. A vast ancient sea called the Tethys Ocean, its waters warm and teeming with life. This might seem impossible, an ocean where the world's highest mountain now stands. But it's true. The rocks at the summit of Everest contain marine fossils, the remains of creatures that once swam in those ancient waters. Limestone formed from the shells and skeletons of countless sea organisms now sits at 8,848 meters above sea level. How did it get there? The answer is a slow-motion collision of continents, a geological event so massive it reshaped the face of the Earth. The Indian subcontinent, once an island continent drifting northward, crashed into the Eurasian plate. When I say crashed, understand that in geological terms, this happened slowly, but with unstoppable force. The Indian plate dove beneath the Eurasian plate, and the ocean floor between them began to crumple, to fold, to rise. Imagine two enormous sheets of paper being pushed together. They don't just stop, they buckle upward, creating peaks and valleys, ridges and wrinkles. This is how the Himalayas were born, thrust upward from an ancient seabed. Sagarmatha is the child of this collision, born from the depths and raised to the heights, the youngest of the great mountain ranges, geologically speaking. A relative infant compared to, say, the Appalachians, which are hundreds of millions of years old and worn down by time. But here's the fascinating part, the part that makes Everest feel alive. It's still growing. Right now, as you listen to these words, as you drift towards sleep, Sagarmatha is rising. The collision that created it hasn't stopped. The Indian plate continues to push northward, and the Himalayas continue to rise in response. The rate is about 4 millimeters per year. Not much, roughly the speed your fingernails grow, but inexorable. 4 millimeters might not sound impressive, But multiply that over thousands of years, over millions of years, and you begin to understand the forces at work. The mountain is still being born, still reaching higher toward the sky that gives it its name. Of course, this ongoing geological activity comes with consequences. The same forces that push the mountain up also create instability. Earthquakes are common in this region. The land shifts, settles, rises again. Landslides and rockfalls are frequent, especially at higher elevations, where freeze-thaw cycles fracture the rock and gravity does its patient work. Climbers know this danger well. The mountain is not static, not safe, not finished. It's a work in progress, and that makes it unpredictable. Let's pause on the mountain's official height for a moment. 8,848 meters. For those more comfortable with feet, that's 29,029 feet. But even this number has a story. For years, the height was debated. Different surveys using different methods produce slightly different results. The 8,848 meter measurement came from a survey conducted by Nepal in 2020, done in collaboration with China, and both countries agreed to it. Before that, the commonly cited height was 8,848 meters as well, though some older measurements had said 8,850 meters. Why does the height change in our measurements? Partly because surveying techniques have improved with GPS and satellite technology. Partly because the mountain itself is dynamic. Earthquakes can alter its height, though usually by small amounts. And partly because defining the summit is trickier than it seems. Is it the top of the rock, or the top of the ice and snow cap that sits on the rock? Snow depths change with the seasons, with the year, with climate patterns. What matters for our purposes as we relax into this story is simply this. Sagarmatha is the tallest mountain on Earth as measured from sea level. It is the highest point on our planet's surface, the top of the world. But Sagarmatha doesn't stand alone. It's not a solitary tower rising from flat plains. It's part of a family, a lineup of giants. Let your mind wander across the landscape now. To the south of Everest's main peak stands Lhotse, the fourth highest mountain in the world, at 8,516 meters. Lhotse shares part of its climbing route with Everest. The two are intimately connected, separated by the South Col, a high saddle that climbers cross on their way to Everest's summit. To the west you'll find Cho Oyu, the sixth highest peak at 8,188 meters. And then there's Nuptse, a striking mountain that forms the western rim of the Everest Massif. These peaks aren't just neighbors. They're part of the same geological story, part of the same upward thrust of ancient seabed. Together, they create the dramatic landscape of the Everest region, a landscape of sharp ridges and deep valleys, of icefalls and hanging glaciers. The valleys between these peaks are carved by ice and water, shaped over millennia into the gorges that channel glacial meltdown toward the lowlands. The Khumbu Valley, the approach route for Everest's south side, is one of these dramatic formations. Walking through it, you're walking through a landscape actively being sculpted by natural forces. Glaciers grinding away at bedrock, rivers cutting deeper into stone. And here's something that really captures the extremity of this place. The elevation range within Sagarmatha National Park spans from around 2,800 meters at its lowest points to 8,848 meters at the summit. Think about what that means. It's like having multiple worlds stacked on top of each other, each with its own climate, its own ecosystem, its own rules for what can survive. At the lower elevations, around 2,800 to 3,500 meters, you find forests. Rhododendron, birch, pine, and fir trees create a green canopy. Animals like the Himalayan black bear and the red panda make their homes here. It's relatively lush, relatively welcoming. Climb higher to 3,500 to 4,500 meters, and the forests thin out, giving way to alpine scrubland and grasslands. The air is thinner, temperatures drop. Only the hardiest plants survive. Low shrubs, grasses, flowering plants that bloom briefly in the short summer. Higher still, above 4,500 meters, you enter what's sometimes called the alpine desert. Rock and ice dominate. Only the most specialized plants can eke out an existence here, and animals are rare, though the snow leopard hunts in these harsh heights, and the Himalayan tahr, a wild goat, finds precarious footholds on steep slopes. And then, above about 6,000 meters, you reach the realm of permanent ice and snow. This is where almost nothing lives, where the air is so thin that every breath is a labor, where temperatures plunge far below zero, even in summer. This is the death zone, as climbers call it, the altitude above which the human body cannot survive for extended periods, where it begins to die cell by cell from lack of oxygen. All of this vertical diversity, all of these stacked ecosystems, exist within the bounds of Sagarmatha National Park. It's a microcosm of altitude's effect on life, a living laboratory of adaptation and survival. And it all exists because of that ancient collision, that mountain-building force that took a seabed and lifted it to touch the sky. As you settle deeper into rest, picture the mountain still rising, millimeter by millimeter, year by year. Picture the forces beneath the Earth's crust, still pushing, still building. Sagarmatha is not a monument to the past. It's a testament to the ongoing power of our planet, to the fact that the world beneath our feet is never truly still. Let that slow, patient growth lull you toward sleep. 4 millimeters a year. Steady, unstoppable, eternal. We've talked about rock and ice, about geological forces and towering peaks. But Sagarmatha isn't a lifeless place, far from it. Despite the extreme conditions, despite the thin air and brutal cold, life finds a way. And not just any life, brilliant, surprising, almost defiant life that adds color and movement to this vertical wilderness. Let's begin with flowers. Yes, flowers. High in the Himalayas, where you might expect only stone and snow, entire hillsides explode with color during the brief growing season. The rhododendron is perhaps the most famous, Nepal's national flower. These woody shrubs and small trees bloom in shades of red, pink, white, and purple, transforming the landscape each spring. Imagine walking through forests at 3,000 or 4,000 meters and being surrounded by these vivid blooms, their petals bright against the deep green of leaves and the white of distant peaks. There are over 30 species of rhododendron in the Everest region alone, each adapted to slightly different elevations and conditions. Some grow as tall as trees. Others hug the ground as compact shrubs, surviving where larger plants cannot. Their blooms attract pollinators. Bees, flies, even birds, creating pockets of buzzing, active life in the thin mountain air. But the rhododendrons aren't alone. Higher up, where the air grows thinner still, you'll find the legendary blue poppy, Meganopsis. These delicate flowers, with petals the color of a clear sky, seem impossibly fragile for such a harsh environment. Yet there they are, blooming at altitudes above 4,000 meters. Their blue so vivid, it almost doesn't seem real. They're a favorite of trekkers, who often stop to photograph them, amazed that something so beautiful can exist in such a severe place. Alpine shrubs and flowering plants dot the landscape even higher. Tiny cushion plants cling to rocky slopes. Edelweiss, with its fuzzy white flowers, grows in the most unlikely spots. Gentians bloom in deep blues and purples. Each species is a testament to adaptation, to the power of life to find footholds, literal and metaphorical, in extreme conditions. And where there are flowers, there are creatures that depend on them. Let your mind fill with birdsong now. Over 200 species of birds have been recorded in Sagarmatha National Park. Some are residents, living year-round in this challenging environment. Others are migrants, passing through on journeys between lower wintering grounds and higher breeding areas. The Himalayan monal, Nepal's national bird, is a pheasant species with iridescent plumage that shimmers in greens, blues, and purples. Males are particularly striking, their feathers catching the light as they forage on alpine slopes. Blood pheasants with their crimson-streaked feathers probe the ground for seeds and insects. Snow pigeons wheel overhead in flocks, their white and gray plumage helping them blend with the rocky terrain. There are centaurs and rosefinches, snowfinches, and choughs. The alpine chough, in particular, is remarkable. These blackbirds with yellow beaks have been spotted at extraordinary altitudes, sometimes following climbers up the mountain, looking for scraps of food. They're intelligent, social, and astonishingly hardy. Birds bring sound to the silence. Their calls echo off rock faces. Their wings cut through the thin air. They make the landscape feel alive, inhabited, less desolate than the harsh conditions might suggest. But perhaps the most mystique surrounds the mammals, especially the rarest ones, the ones that have become symbols of the Himalayas themselves. The snow leopard, first of all. This ghost of the mountains, this perfectly camouflaged predator, roams the high slopes in near invisibility. Its thick spotted coat blends seamlessly with the gray and white of the rocky terrain. Its wide paws act like snowshoes, distributing its weight, so it can walk on snow without sinking. Snow leopards are solitary hunters, preying on barrel, blue sheep, and Himalayan tar, sometimes even on marmots and pikas. They're incredibly elusive. Even researchers who spend years in snow leopard territory rarely see them. Camera traps have given us glimpses into their lives, revealing their grace, their power, the way they navigate terrain that seems impossible even to imagine crossing. Then there's the red panda, which isn't actually a panda at all despite its name. This small, rust-colored mammal with a long, bushy tail lives in the forests at lower elevations within the park. It feeds primarily on bamboo, but also eats fruits, acorns, and small animals. Red pandas are arboreal, spending much of their time in trees, their semi-retractable claws helping them climb. They're shy, mostly nocturnal or crepuscular, and seeing one in the wild is a rare privilege. Other mammals complete the picture. The Himalayan black bear in the forests, the musk deer with its small, tusked face, the Himalayan tahr clinging to impossibly steep slopes, the common longur monkeys in the lower valleys. Each species occupies a specific niche, adapted to a specific range of elevation and habitat. Now let's shift the tone. Let's move from warm fur and bright feathers to ice and cold water. Because Sagarmatha isn't just rock and life, it's also a frozen reservoir, a massive storehouse of ice that feeds entire river systems. The Khumbu Glacier is perhaps the most famous. Over 17 kilometers long, this river of ice flows down from the western to DWM, the valley between Everest and Nuptse. Climbers ascending Everest from the south must cross the Khumbu icefall, a chaotic, constantly shifting maze of ice blocks and crevasses where the glacier tumbles down a steep section of the valley. But the Khumbu is just one glacier among many. The Imja Glacier feeds the Imja Cho glacial lake, which has grown dramatically in recent decades due to warming temperatures, a visible sign of climate change. The Ngozumpa Glacier is the longest glacier in the Himalayas, stretching for over 36 kilometers through the region. The Nangpa Glacier marks an ancient trading route between Nepal and Tibet. All of these glaciers feed into the Dudh Koshi river system. Dudh Koshi means milk river, named for the milky color of the glacial meltwater, clouded with fine rock particles ground down by the ice. This river and its tributaries flow south, providing water to millions of people downstream in the Nepalese lowlands, and eventually joining the great river systems that sustain the Indian subcontinent. The glaciers are beautiful, but also unsettling. They're in retreat, shrinking as global temperatures rise. Glacial lakes are growing, sometimes dangerously, threatening villages downstream with potential outburst floods. The ice that has existed for millennia is melting faster than it's being replaced by snowfall. Here's a surprise though, something that might seem impossible. High-altitude wetlands. At Gokyo Lakes, a series of oligotrophic, low-nutrient lakes sits at around 4,700 to 5,000 meters elevation. These lakes, fed by glacial melt, are a recognized Ramsar site, an internationally important wetland. Yes, wetlands at nearly 5,000 meters. The Gokyo Lakes are stunningly beautiful, their waters a deep turquoise color, reflecting the surrounding peaks. They're also ecologically important, providing habitat for waterfowl during migration seasons. The fact that such wetlands exist at this altitude is remarkable. A reminder that even in extreme environments, pockets of different conditions create niches for specialized life. And then there's a secret, a place that feels like a hidden chapter in the Everest story, the Gama Valley. On the eastern side of Everest, accessible from Tibet, the Gama Valley is a world unto itself. Deep forests grow in the sheltered canyon, protected from the worst of the winds. From certain vantage points in the valley, you can see Everest's formidable east face, the Kengjung face, as well as views of Makalu, the fifth highest mountain in the world. The Gama Valley doesn't see the crowds that the Nepalese side does. It remains relatively pristine, a place where you can still experience the Himalayas in something closer to their wild state. The forests are thick with birch and rhododendron. Wildlife is more common here, less disturbed by human traffic. It's a reminder that Everest isn't just one place, one approach, one story. It's a masaf with many faces, many valleys, many secrets. Now let's talk about the truly strange, the edge cases of life at extreme altitude. Scientists have found jumping spiders at 6,700 meters on Everest. These tiny arachnids, somehow surviving in a place with almost no oxygen, feed on insects blown up from lower elevations by the wind. They're the highest altitude permanent residents on the planet, living in a world of rock and ice where almost nothing else can. Bar-headed geese migrate over the Himalayas, flying at altitudes above 8,000 meters. They've been tracked crossing directly over Everest during their migrations between breeding grounds in Central Asia and wintering grounds in India. How do they breathe? How do they generate enough energy to fly at such heights? Their physiology is specially adapted. More efficient hemoglobin, larger lungs, the ability to hyperventilate without losing too much carbon dioxide. And yet, despite these remarkable examples of adaptation, no humans live permanently above base camp. The Everest base camp on the Nepalese side sits at about 5,364 meters. Even the Sherpa communities, the most adapted to high altitude of any human population, live in villages below 4,000 meters. Gorak Shep, one of the highest settlements, is only inhabited seasonally. Above base camp, the human body begins to deteriorate. Above 8,000 meters, in the death zone, survival is measured in hours or days, not weeks or months. We are visitors to these heights, not inhabitants. The mountain tolerates our presence, but it doesn't welcome us to stay. Let that thought settle as you drift deeper into rest. Life persists, even in the harshest places. But it does so on the mountain's terms, not ours. Now we come to the human story, the tale of how particular people adapted to life at the roof of the world, and how others came from far away to test themselves against the ultimate vertical challenge. Let's begin with the Sherpa people, because they are the true masters of altitude. For centuries, Sherpas have lived in the high valleys of the Everest region, their villages perched at elevations where most humans would struggle to take a full breath. They didn't just survive, they thrived, developing a culture intimately connected to the mountains. But their mastery isn't just cultural or experiential, it's biological. Genetic studies have shown that Sherpa populations have specific adaptations to high altitude that make them far better equipped for life with less oxygen than people from lowland populations. One key adaptation involves the EPAS1 gene, sometimes called the super athlete gene. This gene helps regulate the body's response to low oxygen levels. In most people ascending to high altitude, the body responds by producing more red blood cells to carry more oxygen. That sounds good, but it has downsides. The blood becomes thicker, harder for the heart to pump, increasing the risk of blood clots and altitude sickness. Sherpas, thanks to their EPAS1 gene variant, don't overproduce red blood cells. Instead, their bodies maintain relatively normal blood cell counts, but become more efficient at using the oxygen available. Their blood vessels dilate more, allowing better circulation. Their cells produce energy more efficiently, even with less oxygen. Other adaptations include higher lung capacity, more capillaries in muscle tissue, and metabolic changes that allow them to function well, even when oxygen saturation levels would leave most people gasping. These aren't just individual differences. they're population-level adaptations that have developed over thousands of years of living at altitude. But genetics is only part of the story. Sherpas also grow up at altitude, their bodies developing from childhood in low-oxygen environments. They know the mountains intimately, the routes, the weather patterns, the risks. This combination of biological adaptation and lived experience makes them indispensable to mountaineering expeditions. Without Sherpas, very few foreign climbers would successfully summit Everest. Now, the story that captured the world's imagination. The first confirmed summit of Mount Everest, achieved on May 29, 1953, by Edmund Hillary, a New Zealand mountaineer, and Tenzing Norgay, a Sherpa climber. Their achievement was the culmination of decades of attempts. The first expeditions to Everest began in 1921, approaching from the Tibetan side, since Nepal was closed to foreigners at the time. These early attempts were reconnaissance missions, mapping routes, learning about the mountain. The 1924 British expedition became legendary when George Mallory and Andrew Irvine disappeared high on the mountain during a summit attempt. Mallory's body was found in 1999 at 8,155 meters. But whether he and Irvine reached the summit before dying remains one of mountaineering's great mysteries. Through the 1930s and into the 1950s, expedition after expedition tried and failed. The mountain defeated them with storms, with avalanches, with altitude sickness, with the sheer impossibility of the task. Each expedition learned something, pushed a little higher, refined the approach. By 1953, the race was on. A Swiss expedition had come tantalizingly close in 1952. The British expedition of 1953, led by John Hunt, was determined to succeed. They established a series of camps up the mountain, stockpiling supplies, acclimatizing, waiting for a weather window. On May 29th, Hillary and Tenzing set out from their high camp for the summit push. They climbed the south summit, then traversed along the southeast ridge. They faced what's now called the Hillary Step, a near vertical rock face close to the summit. Hillary led, finding a way up. Then, at 11:30 a.m., they stood on the summit, the highest point on Earth, a place no human had ever stood before. Hillary later said of the moment, "It was not until we were about 50 feet from the top that I really believed we were actually going to reach the summit." They spent 15 minutes there, taking photographs, planting flags. Tenzing left offerings of sweets and biscuits, a Buddhist prayer to the mountain. Then they descended, knowing that getting down safely was just as important as getting up. News of the summit reached London on the morning of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, adding to the celebration. Hillary became Sir Edmund Hillary. Tenzing became an international celebrity, though he faced complicated questions about national identity and credit for the climb. But let's step back from the triumph for a moment and listen to the mountain itself. The Khumbu Icefall, that chaotic maze of ice that climbers must navigate on the south route, is not silent. It moves constantly as the glacier flows down slope, and that movement produces sounds. Climbers describe hearing booms and cracks echoing through the icefall, especially during the warmth of day when meltwater lubricates the ice. Sometimes the ice hums, a low-frequency vibration you feel as much as hear. These sounds are warnings, Ice blocks the size of houses can topple without notice. Crevices can open beneath your feet. Entire sections can collapse. The Khumbu Icefall is considered the most dangerous part of the standard route up Everest. Sherpas cross it dozens of times each season, fixing ropes and ladders, carrying supplies. It's where many of them have died, crushed or swept away by ice. The mountain speaks in these booms and hums, reminding climbers that they are in a place of constant change, constant danger. Now let's talk about oxygen, or rather, the lack of it. At sea level, the air is about 21% oxygen. At Everest summit, the air is still 21% oxygen, but the atmospheric pressure is so low that each breath delivers only about 1/3 the oxygen molecules you'd get at sea level. It's like breathing through a straw while running a marathon. Most climbers use supplemental oxygen above about 7,900 meters. They carry bottles of compressed oxygen and wear masks that feed them an enriched air mixture. It doesn't make the climb easy. Nothing makes climbing Everest easy, but it makes it survivable for people whose bodies aren't adapted to extreme altitude. However, some climbers attempt what's called climbing without O's, summiting without supplemental oxygen. It's incredibly rare and incredibly dangerous. Only about 200 summits have been achieved without supplemental oxygen since Reinhold Messner and Peter Habler first did it in 1978. Climbing without oxygen means operating in the death zone with your body slowly shutting down. Cognitive function declines. Decision-making becomes impaired. Vision can blur. Hallucinations are common. Physical performance drops dramatically. Every step requires enormous effort. The risk of severe altitude sickness, pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, and death increases dramatically. Those who succeed without oxygen are at the absolute peak of human physiological capability, often with genetic advantages similar to those of Sherpas, combined with years of acclimatization and training. But even with oxygen, even with the best equipment and support, Everest claims lives. The death toll stands at over 300 people since attempts began. That's more than 300 individuals who went to the mountain and never came home. Some died in avalanches, some fell, some froze to death. Some simply sat down in the death zone and couldn't get back up, their bodies too depleted to continue. And here's a grim detail. Approximately 200 bodies remain on the mountain, mostly in the death zone above 8,000 meters. Recovery is often impossible. It would require climbers to descend with a body, an enormous physical task in the death zone where you can barely carry yourself. Some bodies have become landmarks, waypoints on the route. Green Boots, a climber who died in 1996 and whose fluorescent green boots were visible for years, became one such marker. These bodies are a stark reminder of the mountain's power, of the fact that for all our technology and ambition, Everest remains a place where humans survive only at the mountain's sufferance. And yet, the crowds keep coming. In recent decades, Everest has become almost too popular. Nepal issues hundreds of climbing permits each year. On good weather days during the narrow summit window in May, hundreds of climbers might attempt the summit, creating literal traffic jams on the mountain. Images of long lines of climbers waiting to cross the Hillary Step or summit have circulated widely, raising questions about the commercialization of Everest. Some experienced mountaineers argue that too many underqualified climbers are attempting the mountain, relying entirely on guides and Sherpas, turning what should be an extreme mountaineering challenge into a dangerous guided tour. The crowds create safety issues. Climbers stuck in bottlenecks at high altitude consume their limited oxygen supplies while waiting. They risk exposure and frostbite. The sheer number of people on the mountain increases the likelihood of accidents. In a strange twist of modernity, 5G cell service now reaches Everest's summit, installed to support climbers and enable communication. You can literally make a phone call from the top of the world. Some see this as a safety improvement. Others see it as a symbol of how Everest has changed, how technology has made the inaccessible accessible, perhaps too accessible. As you settle into sleep, think about this arc. From sacred mountain to first summit to crowded peak. Think about the Sherpas, whose biology and culture make them the true inhabitants of these heights. Think about Hillary and Tenzing, standing where no one had stood before. Think about the bodies left behind, the price paid for ambition. The mountain remains, growing millimeter by millimeter, indifferent to our triumphs and tragedies. We come and go, but Sagarmatha endures. Let that permanence, that patient, geological indifference, carry you deeper into rest. Chapter 5. Visiting Responsibly, Rules, Limits, and Cleanup. 1. Permit fees, transition. If you want to see this place, here's what it takes. Include Khumbu Rural Municipality fee detail. 2. Strict regulations, layout that protect the fragile world rules, fires/camping, /tree lines/trails/guides. 3. No mechanized travel. Keep it tangible. No mountain bikes/motorbikes to protect trails. 4. Nighttime curfew. Add the safety Josh wildlife respect rule. No trekking sunset to sunrise. 5. Pollution control. Show the how it's enforced piece. Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, plus 1,000 plus bins plus pack-in/pack-out. 6. Firewood alternatives. End this chapter with solutions. Micro hydropower, reducing firewood pressure. Chapter 6. The locals benefit, and the ending stays inspiring. 1. Buffer zone impact, community committees, plus buffer zone, 2002. Sharing 50% of revenue. 2. Revenue sharing. Make it human. That revenue supports health/education/infrastructure for 6,000 plus Sherpas via ICDP. 3. Iconic viewpoints. Perfect final beat. You don't have to summit. Kala Patthar and Chola Pass deliver the wow. If you want to see this place, if you want to stand beneath Sagarmatha and feel its presence, here's what it takes. Because visiting one of the world's most fragile and sacred landscapes comes with responsibilities, with rules designed to protect what makes this place extraordinary. Let's start with the practical reality. Permits and fees. To trek in Sagarmatha National Park, you need a permit. For foreign visitors, the entrance fee is approximately 3,000 Nepalese rupees. That's roughly $30 US, though exchange rates fluctuate. This fee goes directly to park management, funding conservation efforts, trail maintenance, and ranger patrols. But there's another fee that's often less discussed. The Khumbu Rural Municipality Fee, also known as the Khumbu Pasang Hamu Rural Municipality Entry Fee. This is a local government charge of around 2,000 Nepalese rupees, collected to support local infrastructure and services in the communities within the Everest region. It's a recognition that tourism impacts local communities, and those communities need resources to manage that impact. For climbers attempting the summit, the fees are substantially higher. A climbing permit for Everest from the Nepalese side costs $11,000 per person for foreign climbers during the spring season, the most popular climbing window. That's just the permit. It doesn't include the cost of guides, Sherpas, equipment, travel, or the expedition logistics, which can bring the total cost to $40,000 to $100,000 or more per person. These fees might seem high, but they serve multiple purposes. They generate revenue for Nepal, one of the world's poorest countries. They fund conservation and park management, and in theory, they limit the number of people attempting the mountain. Though in practice, the permits haven't restricted numbers as much as conservationists might hope. Now, once you've paid your fees and entered the park, you're subject to strict regulations. These rules exist to protect an incredibly fragile ecosystem, one where human impact can last for decades or longer in the slow-growing, slow-recovering, high-altitude environment. First, fires. Open fires are prohibited in most areas of the park, especially above the tree line. Why? Because at these altitudes, trees grow incredibly slowly. A juniper tree that's only a few feet tall might be decades or even centuries old. Cutting live wood for fires would devastate forests that have taken lifetimes to grow. Even dead wood is often protected, as it provides habitat for insects and small animals, and eventually breaks down to provide nutrients to the thin soil. Camping is only allowed in designated areas. You can't just pitch a tent wherever you like, trampling fragile alpine vegetation or disturbing wildlife. Most trekkers stay in tea houses, lodges run by local families, which concentrates impact in specific locations that are better equipped to handle it. You must stay on established trails. It's tempting to cut switchbacks or create shortcuts, but doing so causes erosion, damages vegetation, and creates new scars on the landscape that take years to heal. The trails in the Everest region are sometimes ancient, paths that have been walked for centuries by traders, pilgrims, and local communities. Staying on them isn't just about following rules. It's about respecting the history literally beneath your feet. Hiring a licensed guide is required in many areas, though the specifics of this regulation have evolved over time. The purpose is twofold: safety and environmental protection. Guides know the terrain, the weather patterns, the signs of altitude sickness. They also ensure that visitors follow park rules, don't disturb wildlife, and behave respectfully in culturally sensitive areas. Many guides are Sherpas or members of other local ethnic groups, meaning that hiring them also ensures that tourism revenue reaches local communities. Here's a rule that surprises many visitors: no mechanized travel within the park. That means no mountain bikes, no motorbikes, no vehicles of any kind on the trails. The only exceptions are helicopters for emergency evacuations or essential supplies. Why such a strict prohibition? The trails in Sagarmatha National Park are often narrow, carved into steep hillsides, or built up with stone over generations. They're designed for foot traffic and yaks carrying loads. Mountain bikes would damage trail surfaces, accelerate erosion, and create safety conflicts with the thousands of trekkers and porters using the paths. Moreover, part of the experience of visiting this region is the pace. You travel slowly, on foot, at the speed humans have traveled in mountains for millennia. You acclimatize gradually to the altitude. You have time to observe, to notice, to feel the transition from lower valleys to high alpine terrain. Mechanized travel would fundamentally change that experience, and more importantly, would damage the very landscape people come to see. There's another rule that speaks to both safety and respect for the natural world. A nighttime curfew on trekking. From sunset to sunrise, trekking is prohibited in most areas of the park. You're expected to be at a lodge or designated camping area, not moving on the trails. This makes sense from a safety perspective. Trails in the Himalayas can be treacherous even in daylight. Narrow paths along cliff edges, suspension bridges over roaring rivers, loose rocks, and on ice. Attempting to navigate these in darkness, even with headlamps, dramatically increases the risk of falls and injuries. Altitude sickness symptoms can worsen at night, and being caught on a trail in the dark with altitude-related medical issues could be fatal. But the curfew also protects wildlife. Many Himalayan animals are crepuscular or nocturnal, most active at dawn and dusk. Snow leopards hunt at night. Other species forage or travel when human activity is minimal. The nighttime curfew gives wildlife sanctuary, a period when they can move through their territory without human disturbance. Now let's talk about pollution, because this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of conservation. With thousands of visitors each year, waste management becomes critical. At high altitude, organic matter decomposes incredibly slowly due to cold temperatures and low microbial activity. A discarded food wrapper could persist for decades. Human waste is equally problematic. Enter the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, or SPCC, established in 1991 to address the growing waste crisis in the Everest region. The SPCC has implemented comprehensive waste management systems, including installing over 1,000 waste bins throughout the park at strategic locations, tea houses, viewpoints, campsites. But bins alone aren't the solution. The core principle is pack in, pack out. Everything you bring into the park, food wrappers, batteries, plastic bottles, toilet paper, you must carry back out. Tea houses and lodges are required to manage their own waste, either carrying it to lower elevations where it can be properly processed, or in some cases, incinerating non-toxic waste using approved methods. For climbing expeditions, the rules are even stricter. Teams must bring all waste back down from their base camps, including human waste from high camps. In recent years, this has meant using specialized waste disposal systems, even requiring climbers to carry out their own feces in sealed bags from higher altitudes. It sounds unpleasant, but it's necessary. The alternative is leaving Mount Everest slopes covered in human waste, which has been a problem in the past. The SPCC also organizes cleanup expeditions. Teams of climbers and Sherpas venture up the mountain specifically to collect trash and abandoned equipment left by previous expeditions. They've brought down thousands of kilograms of waste: old oxygen bottles, tents, ropes, food containers, and yes, even bodies when possible. These cleanup efforts are dangerous and expensive, but they're essential. They're an acknowledgement that the mountain cannot clean itself, that the death zone doesn't decompose garbage, that every piece of waste left behind is a permanent scar unless humans take responsibility for removing it. One of the most significant environmental challenges in the region has been firewood consumption. For decades, lodges and tea houses relied on wood fires for cooking and heating. With thousands of visitors needing hot meals and warm rooms, the demand for firewood was enormous. Forests were being cut faster than they could regenerate, particularly the slow-growing high-altitude species. The solution? Micro-hydropower. Small-scale hydroelectric installations have been built throughout the Khumbu region, harnessing the energy of glacial melt rivers. These micro-hydro systems generate electricity for villages and lodges, allowing them to use electric stoves and heaters instead of wood fires. The transition hasn't been complete. Some lodges still use wood, and in areas without electrical infrastructure, kerosene or yak dung are used for fuel. But the spread of microhydro has dramatically reduced pressure on forests. You can see the difference. Areas that were becoming deforested in the 1980s and 1990s are now recovering, with young trees growing where once there was only bare ground. It's a beautiful example of how thoughtful infrastructure investment can solve environmental problems while improving quality of life for local communities. Lodge owners prefer electricity. It's cleaner, easier to regulate, and doesn't require the labor of cutting and hauling firewood. Visitors benefit from warmer lodges and hot food without contributing to deforestation. And the forests recover, providing habitat for wildlife and stabilizing slopes against erosion. As you drift towards sleep, think about these layers of protection. Think about the permits and fees that fund conservation. Think about the rules that might seem restrictive, but are actually preserving something irreplaceable. Think about the waste bins scattered across the landscape, the micro-hydro generators humming beside mountain streams, the cleanup teams risking their lives to collect garbage from the death zone. This is what it takes to love a place responsibly, to visit without destroying, to experience wonder while ensuring that wonder will still exist for others, for future generations, for the wildlife that calls this place home. The mountain doesn't need us. But if we're going to be there, we owe it our best efforts to leave it as we found it, or ideally, better. We've talked about rules and restrictions, about what visitors must do to protect Sagarmatha. But here's the beautiful part, the part that makes this conservation model work. The local communities benefit directly from the protection of their homeland. In 2002, Nepal established a buffer zone around Sagarmatha National Park. Buffer zones are areas adjacent to protected areas where some human activity is permitted, but regulated to be compatible with conservation goals. The Sagarmatha buffer zone covers additional territory beyond the park's core, including villages, agricultural land, and forests used by local communities. Here's what makes this significant. 50% of the revenue generated by the park, from entrance fees, permits, and other sources, is allocated to buffer zone management and community development. That's not a small amount of money. With thousands of trekkers and hundreds of climbers visiting each year, the revenue adds up. This money is managed by buffer zone community committees, local organizations made up of residents from the villages within and around the park. These aren't distant bureaucrats making decisions. These are the people who live in the shadow of Sagarmatha, who have called this region home for generations, who understand both the value of the mountain and the needs of their communities. The committees decide how to allocate funds based on local priorities. And what do they choose? They invest in health clinics, ensuring that communities have access to basic medical care, despite being days' walk from the nearest road. They build and maintain schools, giving Sherpa children educational opportunities that didn't exist for previous generations. They improve infrastructure, trails, bridges, water systems, electricity. Let's make this human. There are over 6,000 Sherpas and members of other ethnic groups living in the communities within and around Sagarmatha National Park. These are people whose ancestors have lived here for centuries, who have maintained a delicate balance with this extreme environment long before it became famous, long before climbers arrived. For these communities, tourism is now a major part of the economy. Lodges, guiding services, portering, and related businesses provide livelihoods that didn't exist a few generations ago. But tourism alone, without the conservation revenue sharing model, wouldn't be enough to support sustainable development. The Integrated Conservation and Development Program, or ICDP, formalizes this approach. It recognizes that conservation cannot succeed if local people are impoverished or if protecting the park conflicts with their ability to make a living. Instead, conservation and development must work together. So when you pay your park entrance fee, when a climber pays for a summit permit, that money doesn't just disappear into government coffers. 50% of it comes back to the communities managed by local committees, invested in priorities that local people identify. This creates a powerful incentive structure. Communities have a direct stake in protecting the park because the park's success directly benefits them. Poaching declines when people have alternative livelihoods. Illegal logging decreases when villages have electricity from microhydro instead of needing firewood. Wildlife is better protected when local people see conservation as benefiting them rather than restricting them. It's not a perfect system. No system is. There are always tensions between conservation goals and development needs, debates about how revenue should be allocated, concerns about whether tourism growth is sustainable. But it's a model that acknowledges a fundamental truth. The people who live in a place are its best long-term stewards, and they need resources and support to fulfill that role. Now, as we come toward the end of our journey through Sagarmatha, let me leave you with this thought. You don't have to summit Everest to experience its magnificence. You don't have to risk your life in the death zone to feel the mountain's power. There are viewpoints accessible to any reasonably fit trekker that offer perspectives on Sagarmatha that will stay with you forever. Kala Patthar is perhaps the most famous. It's a small peak, though at 5,644 meters, small is relative. Located just above Gorakshep, one of the highest settlements in the region. Trekkers can hike to the summit of Kala Patthar in a few hours, usually starting before dawn to catch the sunrise. And what a sunrise! As the first light touches the Himalayas, Everest turns golden, then pink, then blazing white as the sun rises higher. From Kala Patthar, you see Everest in its entirety, the south face, the southeast ridge where Hillary and Tenzing climbed, the summit pyramid. You see Nuptse rising beside it, the Khumbu Glacier flowing below. The view is panoramic, overwhelming, humbling. Climbers say that Kala Patthar offers a better view of Everest than Everest Base Camp itself, which sits in the valley, and doesn't provide the same perspective. You don't need specialized equipment. You don't need months of preparation. You don't need to risk your life. You just need to acclimatize properly, start early in the morning, and walk uphill for a few hours. Then there's Chola Pass, at about 5,420 meters. This is a high mountain pass that connects the Everest region with the Gokyo Valley. Crossing Chola is more challenging than reaching Kala Patthar. The trail is steeper, sometimes icy, requiring careful footing. But those who make the crossing are rewarded with stunning views, not just of Everest, but of the entire surrounding massif. From Chola, you can see multiple 8,000-meter peaks. You can look down into the turquoise waters of the Gokyo lakes. You can feel the wind that sweeps across the high passes, the same wind that buffets climbers thousands of meters higher. You're standing in a place where the landscape opens up in every direction, where the scale of the Himalayas becomes viscerally clear. These viewpoints, Kala Patthar, Chola, and others like Gokyo-ri, are accessible adventures. They're challenging, yes. You need to be in decent physical condition. You need to acclimatize to avoid altitude sickness. You need proper gear and ideally a guide. But they're achievable for ordinary people, not just elite mountaineers. And that's important because it means that the wonder of Sagarmatha isn't reserved for the few who can afford expensive expeditions or risk their lives at extreme altitude. The mountain's beauty, its power, its sacred presence. These can be experienced by anyone willing to make the trek. Think about that for a moment. The same mountain that kills experienced climbers in its death zone also offers safe vantage points from which to appreciate its majesty. The same landscape that requires genetic adaptation and decades of experience to truly inhabit also welcomes visitors who approach with respect and preparation. Sagarmatha is both exclusive and inclusive. It demands respect from the climbers attempting its summit, from the trekkers visiting its valleys, from the communities living in its shadow, from all of us who know it only through stories and images. But it offers itself to be experienced, to be witnessed, to be held in memory. As you settle into sleep now, let your mind carry you to Kala Patthar at sunrise. Feel the cold morning air. See your breath forming clouds in front of your face. Watch as the darkness gives way to gray, then to the first hints of color on the eastern horizon, and then see Sagarmatha emerge from the night. See the summit catch the first light, turning gold while the valleys below remain in shadow. See the plume of snow blowing from the peak, evidence of the jet stream winds that rake the summit even on calm days below. See the mountain in all its impossible grandeur, ancient and young, deadly and beautiful, indifferent and sacred. You're standing there at 5,644 meters, higher than any mountain in Europe or North America, and yet you're looking up, still looking up, at a summit nearly 3,200 meters above you. The scale defies comprehension. The beauty transcends words. This is Sagarmatha, the forehead of the sky, the mother goddess of the world, the mountain we also call Everest. It was born from an ancient ocean, thrust upward by the collision of continents. It grows still, millimeter by millimeter, patient and unstoppable. It holds glaciers that feed rivers that sustain millions. It provides habitat for rare and remarkable life, from blue poppies blooming at impossible heights, to snow leopards prowling the high slopes, to bar-headed geese flying over its summit. It has been sacred to local communities for centuries, long before the first Westerners arrived. It has been protected as a national park and World Heritage Site, recognized as a treasure worth preserving. It has killed over 300 people who attempted to climb it, and carries 200 of their bodies still in its frozen heights. It has been summited by thousands, each seeking to stand where Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay stood in 1953. It feeds revenue back to the communities that surround it, supporting schools and health clinics, infrastructure, and conservation. It is managed with strict rules to protect its fragile ecosystems, with waste bins and cleanup expeditions, with bans on fires and mechanized travel. And it offers itself to be witnessed from Kala Patthar, from Chola Pass, from the valleys and viewpoints where ordinary people can come and stand in awe. The mountain remains. It was here long before us. It will be here long after. It grows 4 millimeters each year, reaching always toward the sky that gives it its name. As you drift into sleep, let Sagarmatha stand watch over your dreams. Let its permanence comfort you. Let its beauty inspire you. Let its story, geological, biological, human, remind you of the extraordinary world we inhabit. The forehead of the sky watches over us all. Rest now beneath the summit that touches the heavens. Rest and dream of mountains.